Good morning, friends. It is Comics Workshop Day 4 of our April Comics Camp, coming to you from merrickbennett.com. How's it going? I'm Merrick, and today we're drawing with, as always, our sponsors for this week, Children's Literacy Foundation. Thanks, folks. Great folks over at Children's Literacy Foundation doing cool stuff in schools and libraries all around New England. And thanks, patrons, for making these live draws possible by joining over at the Patreon. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Boy, I've got a lot of stuff on the desk today. I got Emily Dickinson on this desk here. She is hanging out with us. She wrote a poem here that we're going to play with. We have my forsythias blooming. That might be a little wet from the rain. And I have some paper. And as always, I have my pencil, my eraser. I have some black inking tools. Anything else we want to draw with is great to have. I have some tape and scissors. If you have some handy, we may use those. I will use mine. But if you don't have them handy, you can still draw with us. And you can work from the poem I'm going to be using. You can work from a different poem. You can work on your own story. I have a little format I want to try with you, though. We're going to have some fun with this one. So I have the first verse of Emily Dickinson's poem here. I like to see it lap the miles, otherwise known as poem 383. She wrote a lot of poems. And I have an idea for this. Instead of doing books or panels or pages, I want to take this sheet of paper and cut it up into strips, and we'll put them together and make one long poem, one long poetry comic out of them. So here's how I'm going to do that. And you can follow along at home. I'm just going to fold this page in half the wide way. That's going to be the width of our strip. And I'm going to cut that out and tape those end to end. So if you're doing this at home, you will want to have with your paper a pair of scissors, safe scissors to use, and maybe some masking tape to stick them together. But if you don't have scissors, you can just join two sheets of paper together and have a super tall, long strip. And you can actually join as many sheets of paper as you need together. I remember doing this as kids. We'd draw these long journey scenes or maps and things, and we make them not page size, but long strips with by taping these together. Hey, Blood Moon, glad to see you here. Thanks for joining us every day this week. You get the attendance award. And everybody else, feel free to comment your suggestions or things you discover as you're doing this at home. All right, so I cut that page into strips. I'm sliding them out, joining them end to end. They match size because we fold it on the half line. Just take a little, I'm going to take a little piece of tape for now. I'll do my final taping afterwards and kind of nail down this joint. But for now, it can be a little floppy, just so long as those strips stay together in a single long sheet of paper. That's a pretty cool page to play with. And we could add more on the end if our poem keeps going. All right, the other thing I'm going to do here, this no longer fits in our panel, in our screen here. So do your best as we're drawing together. I'm going to start on the left side. My readers, I think mostly English language readers, are going to go left to right through this whole long strip to the end. So I'm going to start on the left side and just draw down the middle like a wavy landline. This is going to be the hillsides, the horizon of Emily Dickinson's New England, 19th century New England landscape, or maybe a totally different landscape. There you go. Oh, that's kind of cool to pan across that hilly landscape. Now this poem, I like to see it lap the miles and lick the valleys up and stop to feed itself at tanks and then prodigious stop. She never once mentions trains, the word train. I don't think she says it at all in this poem, but it is a train poem. So let's put a line in for that train track, and you can sort of wave it around, have it, go back and forth, come along. Maybe, whoops, I'm over here already. Under those hills. We're going to do some funny stuff with that train track, but that'll be the basic line our train follows. All right, and then we'll change things up. So I would recommend keep drawing in pencil. I'm going to switch to ink just so you can see what I'm doing a little better here. If you like to draw on ink and play with mistakes, then you're free to do that. But just so you know, I'm thinking this train line will just be like a little cartoon map line like this, just a line with the little crosshatches to mean train tracks. and we can put a train on there anywhere. Let's get some poetry into this page, though. Ahoy, Elena. Good to see you all here. Let's get some poetry into this page. So I'm going to put my poetry up in the sky here, just because it's a little easier to read. We could try working it into the ground. You can do whatever you want here, but let's see. I'm going to keep it simple for now. I'm going to copy Emily Dickinson's poem down. That means I'll give her credit, right? I'm not going to say I wrote this poem. I like to see it lap the miles. I like the verb she chooses for a train. It's kind of a puzzle poem, maybe. You have to figure out what she's talking about. It's going to be obvious with the pictures, I think. I hope. There we go. Well, that kind of fits all across the sky. I'm going to come down a line and put the next line in. And lick. Whoops. Careful, Merrick. I'll fix that later. Let me put a little mark on that. Okay, and I'll fix that later. And lick the valleys up. There we go. And then we'll put the next lines in here. I can take my poem with me as I travel. Let's see. And stop to feed itself at tanks. So there will be a water tank here, maybe. Maybe I can write a little smaller. Stop to feed itself at tanks. Maybe, you know what? I just came up with a different idea. This is why I need to pencil before I ink, right? I almost want to take itself at tanks and put them down under and stop to feed. Well, I can do that later if I want to. And then prodigious step. Now, I don't really want to come too far back, because once you've read this far, I don't want to have to read back over here to read across. So I'm going to keep going. I have to move things on my desk in order to be able to see my whole page. And then, oh, I like that word, prodigious, meaning like a prodigy, an amazing step. And then prodigious step. She does go on in this poem. And then prodigious step around a pile of mountains. That's where we're headed here. We're going to have a pile of mountains over there. But let's go back and put some artwork in here. Just so you've seen it before I go any further, I'm going to come in here and fix that K. I'm going to take a piece of scrap paper. I should be able to draw a new K on there. I'm going to grab my glue stick and my scissors, and I'll just cut that new K out before I forget about it and put it over that K. This is why I should be using pencil. I do all my pages at least roughed out in pencil, like you see here. The horizons roughed out, and then we can play with those horizons. Hey, I had an idea here. This first verb, I like to see it lap the miles. Even before the train's lapping the miles, Emily Dickinson is seeing it. So let's put a hill right here in this first section, right in front of that train track there. And we can bring the train track behind it and then just ignore all this. There we go. That looks like the hill passes in front. The train track passes behind the hill. Track, 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 track. That'll be a slow job to put all the cross ties onto this cartoon track. Does that look too much like a fence like that? Maybe we need 2 tracks, 2 rails. That looks more like a train track. All right, so a doubled rail. And let's put a little house up here. And there's a little figure standing in the yard. She's waving down to that train. I'd like to see it lap the miles. I kind of want to see my words wrapped, maybe in a cloud because they're up in the sky. I love this when we take some time to read a poem kind of closely, pay attention to the verbs and the word choices that the poet made, and then let that influence us. Try to capture that voice in what we're drawing. That's a really fun challenge. I'm going to continue these clouds over here and stop to feed itself at tanks. Bump those in. You got to be patient as you're adding these details. Then we'll drop that cloud. And these clouds are touching, so I feel like they're going to read one to the other. We'll figure out what happens there. There we go. Now we're getting that poem stretched across the sky. We'll put these hills in the background. We can add a couple hills. I like to draw these rolling hills. You can add some trees or mountains or any kind of forests or towns or buildings. Maybe we'll focus on the poem and then we can come back and fill up this page with any kind of cartoon scenery that we want to add in there. So the other thing that's missing here is a train itself. So let's do somewhere on this track. I'm going to just bring it up here and add some box cars on there. This is a cartoon train, so little rectangles can be our box cars, or you can get more detailed if you want. And then what do we say here? And stop to feed itself at tanks. Let's put a nice big water tank in here. I'll continue that train line along. Bring those cross ties around. Under the train here. It's kind of nice to think of all the pieces that go into this poem that aren't even mentioned in the poem, but are there. This is the most powerful technology of the day for Emily Dickinson, is this train that comes through town every day. All right, so let's put a big water tower right here. And maybe it's like an X-ray water tower where you can see inside. And there's the spout. There are the legs. Maybe it does need a roof of some sort. And I just had an idea. Something I want to put through this whole page is I think we can bring attention right to the train here by giving it a smoke trail, smoke and steam that come out of that smokestack and go. Let's see, let's start them over here. We'll tuck it behind that hill, passes behind our little Emily Dickinson poet watching it pass. It sort of rumbles along in front of these hills, around the bend, over the whole train. Whoa, that kind of, that really draws your attention to the path of the train. I don't know how many, probably on the next train we'll have little puffs coming out. That'll bring you right in to see it. Stop to feed itself at tanks. And then prodigious step. I'm looking ahead from this tank. I am thinking, you know what I think we need to do here? Yes. I'm bouncing along my trail here. I think the ground is going to drop down and the track will go straight. This prodigious step must be across a river or something. So I'm going to bring a bridge right off that cliff and maybe, oh, let's bring these mountains in the background down. See if we can make it feel like it's going off the edge of the earth. Mountain coming down, coming down. That's kind of cool. That might work. Okay, now let's do some supports on this bridge. Legs coming down, legs coming down. This is an old trestle bridge going out across a canyon, I guess. And we'll put X braces in here, across between those legs. Anything that will make it look a little more sturdy. Another row of X braces, I guess. Anything to keep it from collapsing as a train goes over it. Maybe a couple more legs here just to hold this up. The more rickety it looks, the fewer legs, the more rickety it'll look. But you could put a little train going across there. I'm ready to ink that already. I'm planning in pencil, going back and inking. I like it's kind of exciting to see the picture come out in the ink. So I like that charge. I don't want to draw all the details in pencil. But if it's something complicated like a trestle bridge going off a cliff over a canyon, I might want to stop and put those details in. Oh, and maybe I think there's going to be another train coming up. So let's hint at that train with a couple puffs of smoke, just to keep the reader reading. We've got some space here. We'll put a couple puffs, getting longer and bigger. And we'll put a train on that next page. That hopefully keeps the reader reading right along. I kind of feel like there's a station here. Shall we put a station? We'll put a roof and the side. And then on this side are going to be the platform. Put a little platform on there. Put some windows in. You can put a name on it. Put some people. Any kind of details you want. You can put some buildings or trees in here. Fill your landscape with details. Maybe this is kind of a realistic stick figure land. Maybe your train is, or maybe it's a different kind of vehicle and it's passing through a different kind of countryside. Other planets. You can adapt Emily Dickinson's poem, and then we'll say, you say after Emily Dickinson, based on. Let me do that trestle bridge here. And then I'm going to keep going with this because this poem goes on for 4 verses. So next I'm going to have 2 more sheets. I'll take another piece of paper. I'll tape more onto the end, and we're going to go around a pile of mountains, pier, supercilious pier in shanties by the sides of roads. And then we'll come to a quarry, and the train's going to have to get through that. So I think this will be like an 8-page long scroll. And when I'm done, I will post the final inked version. I will sign it, and I'll put Emily Dickinson's name. I'll say poetry by Emily Dickinson. And I will post it over at the Patreon, so you can check it out there. Join at any level, and you can and you'll get all the updates and the printables. And I should say thanks again to Children's Literacy Foundation for making all our live draws this week possible. Got a lot of cool poetry comics that I'm really psyched to be drawing with you this week. We have one more live draw for Friday, and that will look at some longer format page-based mini comics. So if you want to join us for that, you might want to set up a 1-sheet mini, and I will post links to that and all the invites and everything else you need. That's over at the Patreon and over at merrickbennett.com. Oh, I'm psyched to finally get this Journey comic started. I've got another this will be about 4 times as long, because this is 1 verse of Emily Dickinson's poem. It's going to be 8 sheets wide, and I'll keep you posted on that as it develops. Great. Thanks for drawing with us, everybody. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you tomorrow. That's right, Blood Moon. Yeah, sorry. Over already. It goes fast. We're keeping these short, under 20 minutes, because we want people to be able to tune in and have a good time, start something, and now you can go work on your comic. And see what happens when you take a poem and turn it into a work of comics art. Thank you, Emily Dickinson, for writing this over 150 years ago and leaving it for us to play around with today. It's fun to journey with you, folks. Good luck with your prodigious steps and with your journeys and all your discoveries this week. See you tomorrow.